with the establishment of the Free State in 1922, and for Ireland finally to feel self-autonomy from British rule, in forging ahead to shape the nation as its leaders saw fit, involved bringing it into the 20th century. No one project personified this new hopeful horizon in looking to the future, coming from the troubled and recent past of the 1916 Rising and Civil War that followed, than the ambitious electrification of the country. The Shannon Scheme, a massive hydroelectric project at Ardnacrusha in southeast County Clare, remains the most ambitious engineering project undertaken in the history of the Irish state. Its scale and importance made it an economic centerpiece of the state-building program during the 1920s, and one of the few major success stories of the decade in the early days of the new Free State. In 1923, a young engineer from Drogheda, Thomas McLaughlin, returned to Ireland after a period working abroad with Siemens in Berlin and studying hydroelectric schemes in Europe. In 1925, together with Siemens and the help of T.D. Patrick McGilligan, McLaughlin succeeded in getting a white paper on the scheme accepted by the newly formed Free State government. A budget of £5.1 million was allocated to the ambitious project, 20% of Ireland's national revenue for that time. The Electricity Supply Bill was passed in 1925, and work began on the Shannon Scheme in August of that year. During construction, 4,000 Irish and 1,000 German men worked and lived on site at Ardnacrusha, County Clare. The station was officially opened in July 1929 and began to generate power on the national network in October that year. The Shannon Scheme led to the establishment of ESB in 1927 and was the first national electricity system in the world to integrate all the components of the electricity supply chain, that is, the generation, distribution, marketing, transmission, and sale of electricity. The newly formed Free State government set about developing a plan of liberal economics. Between 1932 and 1958, there was an intense focus and effort to build up domestic industrialization of the country. Although eventually, with the outside world growing exponentially post-Second World War, and the competition of other much larger countries to grapple with, such as France and Germany, Ireland found it had its limits to domestic growth. Its exports could only manage so far without cutting prices, while still managing to make a profit. From 1958 onward, the establishment and business classes had to face the reality of needing to adopt a global outward view on economy to compensate for domestic shortcomings and failures, in order to continue growth and prosperity of the nation. Ireland needed a plan to attract foreign investment. The noble efforts of those who managed the establishment in the first 30 years of its life, to give new optimism and hope to a troubled nation, unfortunately had its limits. Ever since then, the state has used its sovereignty to attract foreign capital, most predominantly tax-based incentives, while trying to manage and maintain relationships and incentives for domestic banking, agriculture, and construction. One man to come from Irish Civil War roots, having been a soldier in the conflict to win his country's sovereignty, who stands historically as the father and visionary of the new state industries of Ireland, was Sean Lemass. Lemass became the visionary for the development of the semi-state model, to manage essential enterprises in a modern functioning state. Believing in a long-term approach to semi-state bodies and projects, he saw was the advantage over private business, as being taxpayer-funded allowed for much longer timelines and thus allowed to become more long-term investments for the good of the nation. In a paper he presented to the Institute of Public Administration in 1959, Lemass outlined taking a long-term approach in a number of key establishments such as the SBE, Air Rionta, Irish Shipping, the CIE, Aer Lingus, Bord na Móna, the Irish Sugar Company, and the Industrial Credit Company. Lemass stressed the semi-state model was pragmatical, not socialistic. In his paper of 1959, he gave warning, however. There is a danger in the course of time these organizations may be directed and administrated with decreasing regard for the national needs and increasing and undue concern for the benefits and convenience of its staff. Saying also, the state-sponsored boards, if they are to fulfill their proper role in the national economy, require to be kept under continuous pressure to revise their procedures and costs in a continuous effort to maintain their efficiency. With the departure of Lemass from government in 1966, his words and deeds would, in time, be betrayed. The generations to follow, not of those who knew struggle and hardship in the founding of a free state, would foolishly and selfishly betray his legacy. Lemass's very own son-in-law, Charles Haughey, would be among the newer generation of politicians to turn their backs on their ancestors, heritage and history, and not treat the Free State, as well as the suffering, sacrifice and hard work it took to create it, and they came to inherit and enjoy, with the respect it deserved. Again, with Lemass's departure in 1966, his successor Jack Lynch chose to allow the wishes of a government guided by morals and integrity for the good of the nation by Lemass to go unheeded. Haughey rose to power quickly within the ranks of Fianna Fáil and had plans to rub shoulders with Ireland's business circles and communities, and so began the Fianna Fáil legacy of hand-in-glove relationships with property developers and other business tycoons, through the founding of TACA in 1966 to create their culture of cronyism and favouritism. Lynch chose party self-preservation over the good of the nation. A longtime friend of Lemass and Fianna Fáil member Todd Andrews, from their IRA days of the Civil War, saw the direction Haughey was taking the party in. Disgusted at Lynch's decision to endorse TACA, cut ties with the party, the last of the old guard sadly were fading away to newer generations of politicians where the good of their nation wasn't a first priority, to the detriment of Ireland and its people. Worse was indeed yet to come.